Yes. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Ko te mea tuatahi a miho ki te ātua, koe te tīmatanga, mei te mūtanga, ona mea katoa. E tika me me atu ki te whare e tūnei ki te marae ki waho nei, tēnā kōrua. E tuanahau hoki ki te mihi ki a koutou kua taimai nei ki te tautoko na kaupapa o tēnei wahanga nui, ULearn, tēnā koutou katoa. He honore tēnei kua taimai mātou ki wainga nui I a koutou. Tēnei te whakatauki, nāku te raurau, nau te raurau, kia ora ai, nā tamariki. Ka mua te oko kōrero I te rao Māori mātua. Thank you all for being here to hear our story. Welcome. It's a great honour to be here. Before I begin our presentation about our exciting journey, I'd like to introduce myself and my colleagues. My name's Jane Lindsay, and for nearly 7 years I was the principal of Totoro School. Currently I'm the principal of Paihia School, and you'll hear a little bit about Totoro School throughout our presentation. Next to me is Raywin Ritchie, who is lead teacher of a highway school and is also our facilitator who works amongst all of our schools and is just wonderful to have. Lee Whitelaw, principal of a highway school. Meralyn Hira, principal of Kaikohekohe West School. Tracey, who worked at Kaikohekohe West, came to teach at Totoro, moved over and was my DP for a couple of terms and is now the current principal of Totoro School. And next to her is her cousin Chrissy, who worked for many years as a lead teacher at Kaikohekohe West School, but she has since moved to Paihia School to be my deputy principal. So we're all whānau from the far north. So that's us. I'd also like to acknowledge Core Education, and in particular Louise Taylor, for being our researcher and being so easy to work with. Thank you so much for making this opportunity for us to be here today. We greatly appreciate it. Louise has also been supported by the IC facilitator Tanya Coots, so thank you to both of you. So I am so glad to be here today and having this privilege of sharing our story. I have wanted to shout from the rooftops about what we have achieved, because if we can do it, anyone can do it. I'm just going to take a moment to put the context of our schools and students in perspective. We all come from low decile, predominantly Māori, rural schools in the far north of New Zealand. Totoro School, 100% Māori, decile 1B, approximately 90 students. One of our classes is a full immersion class, so it's taught 80 to 100% in Te Reo Māori, and 4 other classes from years 1 to 8. The school is very rural, set amongst the gorse of Totoro and beside the local Mahuhu ki te rangi marae. I'd just like to dedicate my part of this presentation to a wonderful kuia, Nanny Cindy. She was the most wonderful, supportive and loving kuia who helped me in my role as principal in a Māori community, who I will consider as whānau forever. A highway school is 17 kilometres away from Totoro, slightly larger with approximately 160 students, 60% Māori and decile 3. Many local farmers' children attend the school, as they have since 1898. The school is situated in the tiny township of a highway, which proudly boasts a dairy, a butchery and the obligatory pub. And if you drive through a highway, if you blink, you may miss it. The third school is Kaikohekohe West School, and it's by far the biggest, with approximately 340 students, 87% Māori. This school is started as one of the very first native schools of New Zealand in 1882. It is a decile 1A school situated in the township of Kaikohe. Most of the families grew up in the local area, as did their forebears. So, let me begin with our story. In September 2011, the then principal of Kaikohe West and I travelled to Wellington to meet with Ministry of Education personnel and some other principals. It was a small meeting held in the beautiful third floor of Te Papa, and we were invited to consider the Ministry's proposal to abandon the usual way of rolling out professional development. We were told that we had the opportunity to decide on our own PD based on our own needs. So instead of being offered whatever PD happened to be going, we could determine what we did. We could develop it how we choose, and they would support us. And in fact, there was $7 million to help us do that. Wow, what an opportunity. So we went back full of excitement, enthusiasm, and hope for the change that we could bring about in our schools. We knew that we wanted to provide a 21st century learning environment for our Māori children. Here was an opportunity to do it properly. We envisaged going around seeing best practice and best examples around the country, taking all our staff and taking our board too. We could see model learning environments and teaching practice. Wow, this was going to be cool. We invited at that time a third principal to join us. Now, our group started small as we wanted like-minded and proactive leaders. All we had to do was get together and put together a plan. We spent many hours and many meetings doing this. In the meantime, a general election took place and the existing political party went. So did the $7 million. But in that illustrious place, Te Papa, an illustrious idea was born, and we were determined to pursue creating our own change, our way. So, we sent our plan to the ministry. It was politely rejected. We changed it. Over the next 6 months, we had many meetings with the ministry, particularly Rose Carpenter. We wanted to create a 21st century learning environment for our Māori students. They wanted to narrow it to a curriculum area measured by national standards. In each of our schools, writing was an area of concern, and so we finally came to common ground and agreed that we would focus on writing. And at last, it took us through to the middle of 2012, we finally had a plan that was accepted and we can move forward. And it was at this time that Meralyn joined Kaikohe West School. And so, the Kaikohekohe Learning and Change Network was born. We knew writing was an area that needed improvement, and the next few months were spent having our assumptions about why challenged. And this was helped through the facilitation of Brian Annan. We started with 3 key questions. What helps you to learn to write? What helps you to learn to write? And who uses that information about your writing level? Now, all stakeholders were involved: students, teachers, parents and whānau, and leaders. And it was significant because the information from all the various stakeholders was different. And that really challenged our beliefs. And contrary to expectations, especially that of the teachers, what we discovered across all 3 schools was that the students were actually learning from each other. This became our achievement challenge. It was so good to have our assumptions challenged, but we needed to unpack it further. We wanted to find out to what extent the children were actually helping each other to learn. We asked 3 further questions. If you needed help in writing, who would you ask and why? Does the student help you to write or help you learn to write? And how do other students help you to learn to write? The students in each class were generally seeking support in their writing from those that they perceived as experts, is what we discovered. Students thought these children were brainy, good at writing, and particularly good at spelling. Also, it was interesting that the majority of the students believed that they were learning from each other. A further meeting with Brian Annan resulted in us drilling even deeper. Once again, All stakeholders were part of the process. This time, we wanted to find out what students were actually doing, why they were doing that, and what was happening as a result. So it was practice, reason, and consequence. Students, teachers, parents, and leaders responded. This resulted in some really powerful information. At home, students were helping each other. At school, they were helping each other. And all along, we as teachers and leaders thought that we were doing all the teaching. The tables were well and truly turned. This is just a small example of the response of one of our parents. And all parents had the opportunity to do this in all 3 of our schools. I just think it's great that parents have an opportunity to talk about their children's learning. I'd also like to share with you a somewhat messy but an incredibly powerful piece of thinking from one of our Year 3 students. There are 2 things I think that are quite significant here. Is one, that she believes that she is helping them to learn to spell correctly, and I love this. They will be happy when they know, and she took the time to take away some and put in heaps of ideas. I just thought that was great. I could show you many, many, many examples of such wonderful thinking from our students. And so we refined our achievement challenge even further. Now remember, these are tough children who sometimes live in an environment where first up was best dressed, survival of the fittest. They like to challenge and they like to be cheeky, especially to one another. Nevertheless, armed with our newfound knowledge, we set about empowering all of our students to help each other in their learning. First of all, through implementing some cooperative activities, teaching them how to give quality feedback, and working collaboratively with anyone at any time. It was at this time, early 2013, that we also had the privilege of visiting Manaia schools, in fact March of 2013. This proved to be a very fortuitous visit. Why? Because it was here that we saw students from low decile communities learning and working from each other. What is more, they were very engaged in their learning. These students were able to help each other and access their learning anywhere, anytime. So could their parents and whānau. Our Māori students learn best when their friends and their whānau are involved. We wanted to replicate what they had achieved for our children, but with our own flavour. One of the first things that became apparent was that Manaia students, the teachers and the leaders, were really willing to share with us. It was such a refreshing way to work. Typically, schools and leaders played their cards close to their chest in case somebody got a hold of one of your really good ideas and copied it. But instead, the Manaia staff were really willing to share with us. They were accessible and supportive. And this is a way of operating that we've adopted. It is liberating, and it opens up opportunities to provide quality learning environments for our students. So, we had a lot of work to do to create a similar environment. First of all, we had to find out if all the stakeholders in our schools were as keen as we were. We shared what we had seen with our Board of Trustees. Their reply? Great, go for it. We as leaders then shared our ideas with our staff. We got possum in the headlights. I think this is a good idea. Yeah, we probably should do this. But nevertheless, they said yes. We then shared our ideas and vision with our students. They were very keen. Parents and whānau were next, and we got an overwhelming positive response. This was our mandate, to instigate fundamental change in our school for our children. Daunting, but nonetheless exciting. The next 9 months was spent preparing for introducing a tool to help us and our children to learn from one another. So instead of just being able to ask the child sitting next to them how to spell because, they now had opportunity to share their writing with anyone and everyone. Our preparation, it was a very busy time. We started bravely by getting a Gmail account. Now you've got to remember, some of us knew absolutely nothing about any of this at all. Next, we learned how to use docs. We started by recording our staff meetings on them. Teachers then had to learn how to make a blog and develop a Google site for their planning. We had to learn about Hapara Teacher Dashboard. So the teachers were learning from one another. I can remember many a day going into the staff room at the end of the day, and there'd be a group of teachers huddled in the staff room, and they'd be saying, "Oh, look what I did. Oh, how did you do that? Hey, can you show me?" They had sleepovers. I know at the end of the year, Totoro staff, school finished, no, let's have a teacher-only day. We need to get together and learn how to do this and help one another. It was just amazing to see their enthusiasm and them helping one another. We also had to get systems and documentation sorted. Cyber Smart lessons were commenced immediately with the students, and we also had to set up a trust. And Lee's going to talk about this because that's a critical factor to our continued success for the future. Infrastructure was a big issue. Our schools had poor internet connection, especially if it was raining or if it was windy. And if it was raining and windy, you could forget about it in some of the classrooms. I know at Totoro we had 10 old laptops, and if one class was using them, we knew in the office because we'd get that wheel of death going around. Chrissy talks about in her class when they saw the one-to-one device class going out to PE, they'd all jump on their devices, and sometimes they'd even go into class early so that they could get on before anyone else did. So definitely an issue, and the thing is they don't teach infrastructure at Teachers College. I mean, hubs, ports, cloud solutions, Snup, Error Hive, Ruckus, Aruba. What? It was all a daunting task. But we had a solution. What we did was we asked for quotes from a range of companies, and that way we were able to select the best for the best deal. And New Era IT has provided great support right from the very beginning, and I would highly recommend them. They've got all our schools sorted so that anyone can be on a device in any weather, and that didn't happen overnight. It was a long process. And I think that if this company can provide such comprehensive support in the far north, I'm sure they can do that elsewhere. It's made a big difference because, as I said, you don't learn that sort of stuff at Teachers College. We really relied on their support, and it was critical. We also had to choose a device. Fortunately, we had the support from Kalani, who use hackers to find the best, most robust device. So Chromebooks were chosen, and a deal was done through Cyclone. We had each school had several parent meetings to consult with them and explain that we could provide a device for every child in years 4 to 8. And what is more, simply by paying a $40 deposit and then $3.75 per week, paid off over 3 years, their child could own their own device to take on to secondary school. What's more, the parents in whānau, could access their child's learning anywhere, anytime, through their blogs or through the Google sites. I can tell you I remain humbled by the 100% take-up of the parents despite their financial hardship. They're really determined to help prepare their children for their future. And so, in the second week of the first term in 2014, our teachers and students went from using pen and paper to having their own device to learn with and from each other. At the end of the day, we got our 21st century learning environment and much, much more. And Lee is now going to continue our story from that day on. Tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa.
Okay, so here we were with 3 schools and many classes of children and Chromebooks and nervous but excited and overwhelmed teachers. The great day had arrived. Our children and their parents were excited and committed. Remember, they had undertaken to pay for the Chromebooks. The first year, we needed to ensure that our teachers were prepared and supported in their journey. It was like forming the rail tracks before as the train was zooming along. Our schools were lucky in that we were supported by an MOE PD contract. So we had an e-learning facilitator working in at least 2 out of the 3 schools. The first year was a time of upskilling and getting routines organised, a bit like the beginning of the year set up when you're setting up a new class. So I've got a few comments here from teachers who talked about that first year because it was a real huge learning curve for them. And this is one of the comments. So the first year, it was quite an individual journey for the children. They learnt and explored and got engaged, new words and skills, setting boundaries, taking risks when and anywhere, learning new things. Last year was really engaging. Learned a new language, new tools, how to work in a small group, throwing away the pen and paper, which was huge. Another comment was, so by my first part of year 4, it's about teaching them the skills, because without those skills, there's no point. They need that groundwork. I said to myself, not a lot of actual learning took place, but I look at it now and actually that was the most powerful learning. Because by the end of the year, those kids were amazing and you'd ask them to do something and they could do it by themselves and didn't even need that support. If I hadn't taught all that skill first, I would have been teaching them those skills all year. And then they were able to apply those skills to their learning throughout the whole year. They were a lot quicker this year because they had that prior learning the year before. It's another component of learning, and it's not to be forgotten about and not to be devalued. Actually, we are learning digital literacy and learning to integrate it so that the grounding and focus on that is critical. And our teachers made a special effort to really have things set up before they got cracking. As a and put all our efforts into providing the necessary skills for teachers. A timetable of a mixture of toolkits and PLGs took place across the network every 2 weeks. Yes, this was hard work and time consuming, but it was necessary to ensure that our vision of learning together was truly visible. We needed to make sure and make the time to nurture the journey for our teachers. Even though the emphasis was on the one-to-one classes, with the classes that had the devices, all teachers in all schools were included in the various PD that was offered. In my school, for instance, the junior teachers were emphatic about their inclusion. They wanted to share the journey and prepare their students for what lay ahead. And I'd like to make the comment that at the time we thought, we were putting all our efforts into these one-to-one devices, but now thinking back, it was amazing that everybody was sharing in the journey, and it's made for a much better transform through this classes. Oh, thank you. So it was about learning and trialling and coming to terms with what teachers knew and building on what teachers knew and sharing this with their children. Teachers' knowledge in digital technology and the Chromebooks, sharing PD, learning from others, and collaboration across the schools was starting to happen. As I said before, we were building the tracks as we went, with urgency and lots of collaboration, learning about the tool and what we could do differently. However, at the same time, it was about making sure that the writing challenge, which had been our original curriculum focus, was well supported, and while students and staff and whānau were learning. So we made a special times that we would go back and say, well, what about the writing? This is not about the device, this is about writing as well. So there were big changes for teachers. Here is an example of a teacher who could be seen to be originally as one of the most sceptical and resistant to change. You can see by what she says that she has made huge changes in her learning. Now she's one of the teacher, a fantastic teacher, but when anything new comes along, she's very slow to resist, slow to take on board the changes, but she has been quite amazing. And as you can see of what she says, I think more about the ways you can communicate with the children. I try and think more from inside their head. I used to think it was all about me getting stuff inside their heads, but now I think more, and I try and think more. I'm not always successful about this, but I do try and think, okay, what's going on inside their head? And if you knew this teacher, this has been huge for her to actually be able to say that and talk about it. So as leaders, we had not previously worked together. We were like-minded in what we believed, particularly about student achievement and national standards. This was challenging times leading change, as everybody knows. So as we as leaders had to make sure that we supported each other, but also held each other accountable for the decisions we made. For learning, we've learned a lot, and we each have strengths that we share about the different things that we know. This was a good model for future changes. We've shared ideas and also assessment data. We've shared what's working and what's not. Collegiality, this was a refreshing way to work together, remembering that our schools are quite, there's 45 k's distance from one end of the network to the other. So any commitment in going to meetings, which I'll talk about shortly, was a huge commitment. Leading change has taken courage, and working with colleagues gives us motivation. Reducing isolation, breaking down barriers, instead of operating in isolation, especially given our rural location. Networking, if we had not started as a learning and change network, we would not have achieved what we have, nor would we have had the opportunity to network with other schools, and we wouldn't actually be here today. Our network has worked well because we had principals working alongside lead teachers. The lead teachers were the drivers of the professional development, and so it was driven out of need. It wasn't ever imposed on us. The network provided teachers with opportunities to work face-to-face and digitally with teachers in their own school, but more importantly, across schools and across year levels. There were opportunities for teachers to share ideas and practice, and that is working in classrooms right now. We help to support each other, work together. There have been huge teacher shifts and changes to practice. Teachers are motivated and excited about their jobs. It's a different way. There have been big shifts. There has been a safeness about the way we are doing it, done in a way that teachers know they have support. And that's a comment made by teachers. We had to build confidence and skills in teachers, and this leads to teachers willing to stand up now to take toolkits, share in smackdowns, and are confident to have walkthroughs from other teachers from the network and indeed across the country. And the teacher I referred to in the quote that said now she was thinking about what was in children's heads, she would never have dreamt of being able to stand up and take the lead in a toolkit or a professional learning group, and she's quite confident now, and it's just amazing to see the difference in people. The connectiveness allows teachers to work with each other, keep in touch with parents and whānau, share children's learning with parents, provide feedback to children and whānau. Our PLGs run for 1.5 hours and they are rotated around the schools that are involved, and that each school hosts each PLG for one afternoon. At the beginning there is a time for teachers to mingle and get to know each other while having the afternoon tea. What's on top? This is an opportunity for teachers to share what is worrying them, and at the beginning I'd have to say the what's on top took up the major part of the afternoon, and we've all noticed that the what's on top has dwindled, so there's not so much on top anymore because they're helping each other and learning from one another. We share pedagogy, readings or things that have been identified as important in discussion with everyone. There are new learning of tools, apps, anything. It's a time of sharing and learning from one another. In the toolkits, teachers share with lead teachers before the actual toolkit. They share what needs are around digital learning, and then the lead teachers, they get together and they work out the component and what will happen at the toolkit and what will be offered, and then arrange presenters from within our schools. So it's very, very driven from the needs of what people need to learn from one another. One of the PLGs is set for moderation across all schools. They are in Term 1 and Term 3. So this gets back to the writing challenge. So all the time, it's not about devices all the time, it's getting back to that writing challenge, the achievement challenge. The LCN project was the starting point for our 3 schools. Then came the MOE facilitators who were passionate and provided great support for what they were doing and guided us towards what we were doing and aspiring to. Throughout the journey, Manaia have provided incredible support to our network. In the beginning, we had the expertise of Dorothy Burt. She attended our meetings to guide us on what we needed to do. She was always just an email away. The Manaia model is what we have modelled our trust on. Our trust was formed in 2013. This in itself was a major undertaking, as we had to talk to people in the community who we thought may be influential and be keen to work towards the development of our vision. Remembering that we're in the far north and we don't have big corporates and huge businesses wanting or knowing about education and wanting back to front. Usually I think you would set up the trust and then get cracking, but we did it the other way round. The principals of the original schools had to play a major role in driving this stage of our work. The trust did take a wee while to get fully working, and they also needed support to help develop their knowledge so that they are now able to talk confidently about the strategic plan and vision that we all have for the children in Taitokerau, so that they will all have the opportunity to be educated in a future-focused environment. And it's interesting now because I listen to various members of the trust, and at the beginning they would come to meetings, or we'd go to meetings with them, and they really didn't know what they were on about, but now you'll hear them individually talking about their trust and being really excited about what's happening for the children, and it's really interesting to listen to because these are not education people. Maybe they've been brainwashed by the principals. The Manaia schools, they've provided huge support for our teachers. They've allowed teachers to be able to go and see classrooms working with devices. They share their work on their class sites and are willing to answer any questions that our teachers have. And I don't think we can thank them enough, because it was really, like Jane alluded to at the beginning, we'd been going down the path of modern learning environments, and it was actually when we went to Manaia, we were able to see that here was a whole group of low decile schools that were making a difference to student achievement. So we knew then that I think has given us the power and the courage to be able to say other people have done it, because we did have comments from schools around us who said, you can't get your parents will never pay for Chromebooks. But people are making assumptions about their parents, and that gave us the absolute strength and power to say anyone can do this. So the huge success of our journey has been from the support that our parents and whānau have given throughout. They believe that this is the way for their children's future learning. We have always been frank and upfront with them and told them all along we're going along the rail tracks what we are doing. The whānau are key to this being successful, so Meralyn is going to further develop the component about whānau relationships.
Thank you, Lee. Kia ora nō koutou. These next few slides are going to share with everybody how our Kaikohekohe Education Network made some differences to encourage collaboration with our whānau and parents. Whānau are the key to this being successful. That's not a new message. Whānau and parents are the key stakeholders for learning and the difference in teaching and learning practices. We understand this. We needed this relationship to be genuine, and partnerships for our school's collaboration goal could be achieved. Our defined belief, learning together, is empowering. This far in our journey naturally extended to our whānau as indicated earlier. Parents and whānau have been involved from the beginning with consultation, and now powered by whānau providing the device as motivation, fueled our motivation to partner with whānau along the journey with students, staff and skills development. Within this first year, we also had to plan and support for our whānau and carefully grow the concepts and skills needed in the classrooms, in the home, alongside us. Whānau goal number 1, introduction workshops, where we also got signed agreements by whānau and permission slips. And the permission slips help cover us for photos and work that was being shared across our classroom sites and our school sites. As I said, it wasn't enough for our students to have the devices provided by parents. Whānau became the target audience, a real audience in our students' reality, an audience that could view their writing, their learning, and for sharing tips of programs trialled, apps tested, and knowledge learnt each week. Like the teachers and the students, the range of skills and access and abilities of our whānau was equally varied. This slide shares the initial workshop information each school provided throughout the year as an introduction. I've put them in 4 categories, and they happened as regularly as we could manage. So on the far left, kawa of care is what we called taking care of the device and care of our learning, and that was to create that practice both at home and at school. Other workshops included promotion of writing anytime and anywhere, and this was exciting in a way that students at their rugby matches could take notes or take a photo or write down something that they would remember to write about in depth later on. Something at church, maybe the minister had said a quote that's challenged or provoked their thinking, or simply something that was on their mind from current events. It could have been anything. Safe learning, digital citizenship, lots of work went into how to keep passwords safe, identities safe, interacting in the digital forum in a safe way, and having our parents understand this was to help them support it both at home and at school. Schools could also restrict sites and public sites, and it was really helpful for us to let parents and whānau know those tips, because those were part of the worries they were having. And Wi-Fi access that they could access Wi-Fi on school at any time for any of their work. Goal number 2 with whānau, same platform, so we could connect and link students, teachers and whānau. Parents and whānau eagerly signed up to the Google platform that enabled connectedness to their child's learning. Novice technology users were helped to register with Google, and even users, parents and whānau users of other platforms registered to Google to make that connectedness smoother. Whānau knowledge and practice was important to the programs our network had agreed to focus on. Our third goal with whānau was regular skills practice. Blog practice workshops, commenting was encouraged without critique. It wasn't important to us what parents said initially, it was just that they were making a comment, they were posting a message, they were letting their student or their teacher know they had visited. To help without critique, and to help with our advice, we then came to give some support around the comments could be something helpful, something kind, and if possible, something that provoked an action or a thought or an addition to the work. Classroom site navigation practice and workshops. Here you can see a mum and a daughter. She's showing mum how you can visit the classroom sites and see what's planned each week, each month, throughout the term for their learning. And this was really helpful for whānau that wanted to be involved at home, but felt the challenge of coming into school or time challenges. So the sites were really helpful. Email practice and workshops. Parents could connect directly to teachers via email, connect directly to their students, their child, and equally children to their teachers and their parents. So another really empowering tool. Further on in our story, you'll hear from my colleagues some more specific examples and parent voice about these connections. But here I've got on this next slide a picture of a blog comment posts by a mum and a dad, and an example of parent engagement that we now include in measuring whānau engagement and feedback in student learning. We're especially proud of the whānau we are getting to see virtually or meet that we don't normally get to meet because coming to school is hard for different reasons. This is how our Kaikohekohe Education Network is making a difference with whānau collaboration. Parent and whānau visibility was still the preferred connection for our students. They wanted to see their parents face to face. They wanted to see their peers see their parents at school. Students shared their learning as presentations or as workshops developed through this first year was encouraged. Again, planning for these and making them as regular each term as we could was a challenge. We got better and better as the year flew by. Students articulating their learning, reflecting on their learning, setting goals or learning by students with teacher support and whānau audience gave more ownership on what they share and what impacted their learning. Feedback from whānau, obviously, is positive and encouraged. Their input on projects for presentations was another difference we were driving to collaborate with whānau. Learning and teaching, writing was becoming visibly different by whānau, for whānau and with students. In all honesty, the year was hectic. As we planned whānau engagement and collaboration on the run, we later termed this building the track as the train was coming. After this first year, our infrastructure was sorted out, the standard of skills across our schools were being sorted. We were growing whānau, student and teacher learning together, natural collaboration, and these are just a couple of examples of how writing displayed in classrooms soon changed to writing displayed on blogs or sites. We still balanced them in the classroom so that when parents did come in person, they could walk around with their student or with the teacher and have discussions. Students sitting at desks soon turned to collaborating live across classrooms, across schools, and then building discussion or learning maps. Students, parents and whānau learning together. Learning together in writing is empowering. If we can achieve this, we assure other communities anyone can do this. Raewyn has our next area of urgency, deliberate learning. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora everyone. In our second year of the one-to-one classroom devices in classes, the teachers were making changes to their teaching practice now. There was a subtle change happening where the balance of control in the classroom was starting to change. Teachers were beginning to give students a variety of digital technologies, apps and programs for their learning across the curriculum. Within the network, teachers' skills still ranged, the skill range was still great. At the beginning of the year too, we still had to allow time for teachers to have support in PLGs and toolkits, as they still needed to focus on some of the skills that they wanted to start to transfer into their teaching. Where am I up to? They, at the beginning in the year 1 to 3 blended learning classes, they had starting to download apps. In the first year, just any apps, but they're on the iPads, they'd just take whatever they could find and put it in and think, oh yeah, this is great to have in the classroom. And as the year progressed, we found that the work didn't actually relate to what the teachers were teaching in the classroom. So this year, we decided that we needed to get them to focus more on less apps, less programs that were in our Google for Education, and make them more specific to the learning, so that the teachers had to make sure that what they were teaching was actually going to be, the children would be able to use these apps and programs to show their understanding and their learning, rather than it being just looked upon as a game. So in the second year, the network was very lucky to be accepted onto the Manaia Outreach Program, and this enabled our network to have 2 more facilitators within the schools. And our trust also provided another facilitator to work alongside teachers and students in the classroom. And this has been invaluable, as it has provided extra support for teachers, so that the focus of the teacher in the classroom is now about creating and sharing of students' work, rather than just the skills. It is now time for teachers who have had 2 years in the Chromebooks in their classes to take the next step in the journey of allowing students to have more control over their learning, and teachers working with and across the schools more. Now we will hear from Tracey about how she has made her changes as a teacher.
I'll just tone my voice down. To understand what changes I've made in the last 2 years, I've provided you with a snapshot of some of the main influences around my educational journey. You can see there's nothing special that jumps out. However, there's a little word in the bottom right hand that I believe is pivotal in helping me to become a successful educator, and that is adaptation. I'm a teacher who is able to adapt my teaching practice to suit the learner. I've done it throughout my whole years, well, over 20. And I've done this with my new entrants, to my high school boys, to year 5 and 6, and to 7 and 8. So I've been around a bit. Last year I attended the GAF conference, and as I was listening to Jim Sills, I realised I needed to change, each teacher had this fabulous, each student had this fabulous tool in front of them, and I was still teaching my class as though they had books. I was still micromanaging. I still had a timetable that reflected a non-digital device classroom. I really needed to make change, and this is what I did differently. First of all, I forced myself to do something different. So I incorporated YouTube editor into my literacy program, and I decided that my teacher focus inquiry in term 2 was how can I utilise digital story making to improve student engagement and achievement in literacy. I changed the way I planned, making sure all students can access the lesson plan. I also planned on Google Site. I provided many opportunities for students to share their Google Docs, becoming collaborative writers. I introduced the Read and Write app. I taught the basics of YouTube editor. I thought if I taught the basics, they'd find the rest. And I searched for online experts. This slide speaks for itself. Provide plenty of resources. If you don't do this, you will encounter each student's dilemma, like, Miss, how do you? Or, I don't know what to do. So provide the resources so that the students can solve their own problems. This helps the teacher to motivate and solve the really big issues. Now, just remember, our students are learning to collaborate. Your main big issue is building stronger learning relationships within the classroom. And then provide targeted resources. This helps the students not to wander through the Google tangled web. So this is something that I provided. Now, here are just a few examples of the movies that we managed to make through Term 2. The movie, hopefully I will show you, is the first movie that Room 6 produced for Matariki. I placed each student into a group of 4, and the best script selected by the class was the script that will be chosen to be made into a movie. Each group averaged around 2,000 words.
There once was a brave young man named Mitai, who lived with the 7 brothers in the village. Mitai was the youngest brother. He was raised by his papa. Mitai could transform into a bird or an albatross and glide down the rainbow uenuku. He could also eavesdrop while his brothers were talking.
Thinking of travelling somewhere to go hunting? Yeah, because the kai basket's getting a bit empty, you know.
Mitai loved going on adventures as much as his brothers loved themselves.
Okay.
His brothers were the most handsomest males in the village.
All of us.
I got the nicest hair out of all of us.
I got the best abs.
So, I got the more muscles. That makes me more handsomer.
Quit screaming, boys. I'm the best out of all of you. I don't care about my looks. I just care about my intelligence and the adventures. I'm wanting to be fit, skinny, and super bright. And that's what makes you a man, the man.
Stop fooling around, boys. Vito's already proved this point. He's the best.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, I guess so.
As the brothers were fighting about who was the best, they all decided to go on an island to go hunting on top of a hill. When they arrived at the hill, they heard a beautiful sound of wahine singing.
What's that? What's that beautiful?
Oh, excellent. As you can see, kids love selfies and they love taking movies. So what you're providing them is a platform to present better movies focused on a particular subject. Now, this student, Tiari Jack, He was working at 2P at the beginning of the year. His main problem was that he didn't like to write, so he didn't. And you can see here, this is one of his recounts that he wrote about visiting the Warriors, and I can say that he's more than a 2B or 2P. This student was also a 2P. Her issue, grammar. In fact, you couldn't understand her writing unless she stood beside you and she guided you through this piece of writing. Now, both students struggled with writing. Both had bad experiences with writing, so both were reluctant. However, because I changed my way of teaching, I feel all my students became confident writers. And the proof is in the pudding, and you can visit my Room 6 totalschool.blogspot.co.nz to actually see the other students as well. These are the results that I made last year. The change I made in writing assisted my students to make gains in their writing levels. I know 33 is not a great percentage, but I only had one student and out of the 30 students that I taught. What I do want to point out is that out of the class of 30, year 7 and 8 students, 86% made learning shift. Yeah. Now, this great achievement also spilled into reading. As already, you can see this, the girl who was a Stay 9-2 made a shift of 4. So I can say that change does happen if you're willing to make it yourself. Already stated, an integral part of our journey is the meaningful engagement of whānau and their children learning. Raymond is now going to make further connections between the introduction of digital devices and a change of pedagogy has strengthened meaningful connections to learning.
Thank you. Once again, I'm going to be talking about emailing and the effect it has had on whānau and parents. So this is a story that I interviewed with a parent, and he was telling me about his daughter. He was a farmer, and he was out doing the cows, and his phone goes, or beeps, and he looks at it, and it's an email from his daughter, and his daughter is saying, "Oh, Dad, do you know what alliteration is?" So he sort of had to scratch his head and thought, I think I do, but I better go online and find out. So he went online and he found out, and then he decided to make a couple of sentences that he could pass on to her. So he created these and sent them to his daughter. And he just said it was so powerful that here he was out on the farm doing his work, and he could actually make a connection with his daughter. And it gave him the power that when his child came home, he could then carry on that conversation with her at home. And so he said that it was a great step forward in dads being able to connect with their children. He also found that when he was sitting at home doing his work at night or in the afternoons, he would find his email buzzer thing would go off, and there was a post from his daughter to say that his daughter had posted something on the blog. So then he could go in, he could read what she was doing and make comments. So that was one conversation I had. Another one I had, it was about a mother making contact with a teacher. Her child had to go to hospital, and she was not allowed she couldn't come back to school for a few weeks. And so the mother had the dilemma of, what am I going to do with the child's learning? But it wasn't a dilemma, because in the classroom, the teacher had already organised for learning to take place at home. She had created the work that she needed in the class, and so it was visible at home for the parent to get on and see the mother could help the child at home. If the mother didn't understand what the work was about, she just started emailing to the teacher. And she found that by emailing to the teacher and building that connection, teacher, she felt like she was more in touch with the teacher. They had developed that sort of, what do you say? She'd developed an understanding between the two of them, and so that made it easier for the teacher, for the parent to go in and talk. And they found that this communication actually allowed for the daughter to carry on with her learning. It wasn't going to hold her back. The next slide, I found the slide, and I thought it just represents where we're up to in our learning in the second year of devices. In our schools, we have blogs from year 1 to 3 classes, and from year 4 to 8 classes have a class blog, as well as students have their individual blogs. The student blogs are a way for students to share their learning with other students in the class, across the school and across our network. This has still been developing, but has been a major push from our facilitators this year. Blogs have made it possible for parents and whānau to access to students' learning anytime. The students like to be able to share their work and are always interested in seeing who has commented on their blog. Parents say that when they go onto the blogs or come to school for student-led conferences, that their children are more interested in sharing their portfolios or their blogs or just their work in general. They are able to share confidently and can navigate around the Chromebooks with ease. Another example of this was a student telling me that he had received an email from his grandmother, but the grandmother lived in England, and he was so pleased. She had blogged, made a comment on the blog, and said how she was so pleased to see his learning, and also she'd been looking at his e-portfolio, and so she was just making a comment about his work. He was just asking if he could email his mum to tell her that grandma had emailed him. And I was in there as a relief teacher for that day, and I said, absolutely, you just go ahead and do that. And the boy was beaming from ear to ear. He was eager to share what his grandmother had said to his mum. Now, 2 years ago, this would never have happened in our schools. Those grandparents and people around the world would never get to see what our children are doing. So I think it's a very powerful part of creating our network and being able to share our work across our blogs and, across the world. Now, the second part of this is a conversation that was had between 2 students. And it was talking about emailing and blogs. So this is what they said. Instead of having to go over and sit with someone, you can just share it with them. And if you're at home, you've still got your Chromebook, you can sit together at home. You can still work together at home. And we can also talk to each other in the weekends, even if we're not at the house, because we've got emails and it's easier to talk. If you need help and you know someone who is a little bit smarter than you can just share it with them, and then they can help you. And that's so much easier. So it's not just the teacher. No, it's everybody in the class. A lot of people share their things so they can help each other, and a lot of times people share their own work with people so they can get help from them. Is that encouraged? Yep. I share my work with all my friends and my family. So tell me about that. I'll share my work with my family so they can see what I've been doing on my Chromebook, and so they can see my work and what we've been learning about. So how often do you do that? I do it with nearly all my work that I enjoy doing, and that Miss likes, the teacher likes. I share some things with my family, but I haven't done yet, so they can just help me and see what they can do with it. And do they? Yep, my Nana helped me with my scientist work. We were doing scientists for our science fair. My Nana corrected one of the dates on it, and I was happy that she had helped me. You can see that students are learning together with with themselves and whānau. And I think this picture says it all. The second year of our journey is not just about browsing, clicking and games. Rather, it is about inventing, designing, creating, building and sharing. Now Lee will talk about the challenges that we have faced through our journey.
Okay, so this has been a really exciting journey for us. Our vision for our trust is to include other schools in the area as the time becomes right and we are able to provide the mentoring and support that is needed to ensure that the network remains true to its vision of learning together is empowering. Of course, there have been many ups and downs. The ups being the engagement, motivation and thirst for learning that has been developed in our children, teachers and whānau who learn from one another. Setting up the trust was both exciting and hard work. Being part of the Manaia Kalani outreach has certainly been an up. We are the drivers of this initiative. This is not an MOE project. We are in charge. It has not all been about being on cloud nine. There have certainly been some stormy times along the way. Having no money was actually a benefit. Normally when you are on a professional development in the past, you've been given heaps of money, but I think this was actually a benefit for us. The money wasn't handed out. We actually, because of that, we were able to do it ourselves and drive what we were doing. Now we have the trust. Money is becoming less of an issue, especially now that we have been given quite a large grant from Rotary International. Time, I think we've mentioned that before. What we are doing takes an enormous amount of time to make sure that we're on track and keeping true to what we want to do. Meetings, making sure that everybody, we now have 6 schools on board, so we've moved from our 3 schools, so that's a further complication. Commitment to the calendar, making sure that everybody attends and is committed to what has been put in the calendar. So we all sit down, no one person does the calendar. Everybody sits around and we have a meeting, principals get together and lead teachers to actually work out the calendar. Different priorities, of course, 3 very different schools in 3 different communities. So of course they have different priorities. And I think it would be fair to say that we keep going back to the fact that it's not about the device. We're still really precious about the kapahaka group, the arts, PE. Children are not sitting on Chromebooks. You might think they're in Chromebooks at playtime, lunchtime. They certainly aren't. They're out doing the normal thing, riding bikes around the cycle track, unicycles, doing all those things. So we're really, we've preserved that as well. Collaboration rather than competition. Risk-taking and being brave, I think we've talked about that. Getting families on board is an up and is a challenge, but we've been really, really lucky. As said before, our parents have taken this on 100%. Professional development for teachers and the whole notion of managing change. Inducting new teachers and new principals. You might have gathered that there's been quite a lot of movement. I'm the only really remaining principal in the 3 original schools. So we've had new teachers and we've had to make a special effort to make sure that those teachers get the support and induction necessary to keep our group, as I say, true to our vision. Despite these challenges, as I've said, we're really excited and we continue to be excited, and as Jane said, we often feel like jumping from the rooftops to see these children. I walk around my school and just see these children are engaged all the time and they're sharing your learning. They're emailing me. I'm getting my emails going ping ping all the time, and it's some child sharing their learning with me. And to me, that's the most exciting thing, that through these devices, that learning is so important. I think that's all from me about that. You might think of some questions later about the challenges, but for us, we're down the track, and we're still very excited. So, and excited for our families in Northland.
And so the next one is the next steps with our Acquire, Build and Communicate. So if we look at the Kaikohekohe Education Trust, their goal is to keep providing ongoing support and resourcing for us, to provide a network administrator and to keep the money coming in for PD. Within our network, Kaikohekohe network, our first goal as a network is to continue to expand our network so that we gather in the schools where our children are going to continue on to, so that their learning doesn't stop because they're going to a school that's not a future focused school. We would like to influence other schools within our community and the wider Taitokora area so that they can come on board and join in our journey as well. For our network next year, we are looking at learning across schools taking place, so that we will be trying to get children from different schools to participate in a project or in learning together, but across the schools. We'd like to see teachers working together to create innovative student-led learning. We want teachers to be planning, thinking and be challenged to provide a learning environment which challenges the teacher's pedagogy, and it also provides for future-focused learning. We want to continue to grow and strengthen our collaboration and communication between the schools, so that it now is, we're looking at going deeper rather than wider. The last slide I think we started with, if we can do what we have done, then anyone can. So I think that's an important thing to remember when you're thinking about taking that next step. It can be done if you have the passion and if you have the desire to change not only your own way of teaching and your own beliefs, but helping to support your teachers and students. So on that note, it is over to Chrissy to finish off our part of the session.
I'll freak the cameraman out. Over here. Wow, hasn't technology come a long way? Because let's be honest, a lot of times, I've been to ULearn, I'm a gaff addict. If anyone sees Jim Sills, I've got a David Bowie t-shirt I'd like him to sign, but never mind, that's aside. But one of the things you always hear people talk about is the technology, the device, the app, whatever. Well, technology's been around forever. In fact, if you are my age, you'll know what that is. The Bander machine, yep. And if you were really good at intermediate, you got to, on a Thursday afternoon, go along and sniff the meths, hands up. Yeah. Bad things in those days. And that was something really flash. Of course you needed one of these. Who had typing lessons? Teachers were allowed to hit us in those days, eh? They used to come along and you'd have those bibs up, and they'd come along and they'd go, "The whack, you're looking, Smith." Said stop. Okay. And that was technology. All of that stuff stayed at school. None of it went home. Not many people had a typewriter in their home. And in fact, about the same time that we had that and that, I remember I'd love to have been a science teacher. They had those big green boards. You'd go in for 40 minutes, they'd write on them, and then they'd fold out. Anyone remember that? And you just wrote for the whole 40 minutes off the board. All these things, all this technology was about communicating messages. And we completely controlled it, teachers. We said when you could use it, we said how you'd use it, and we said what you'd use it for. The how is the big thing. Then we got these. They were actually glorified word processors. Wonderful things. I remember my one, it had a printer beside it, the first one I ever had. I've always thought I was like a techno-savvy teacher back in the day. Anything technical, oh yeah, I'll give it a go. Then I'd timetable it. And if you weren't a very good writer, you didn't really get a turn on my PC, because I had to correct all your writing first, or I had to go on after you, you know, and I had to correct it then. So that was my teacher age job, actually. Decipher the writing, get it on the paper, and put it on the wall. And do it in the colour and the font I like. Actually, these guys didn't have colours, you had black and white. And that's what we did to students. So, you know, this learning is not about the technology or the device. It's about what we do, how we do it. And as Tracey's illustrated, changing your pedagogy to make this work for whānau and students. It's about empowering kids. Back when we went to school, no one talked about student voice. Student voice was what you did at assembly on a Monday morning when you sang the national anthem. You were also allowed to have it if you were good enough to be in the production. Everyone remember that? That's what student voice was. Because really, teachers didn't want to hear what we had to say. And I get that. It's difficult listening to kids' opinions, listening to what they want, especially what they want to learn and how they want to learn it, and then how they want to present it. So these bits of technology were great. Then you got these netbooks. I had 1 to 2. That was pretty confronting. 1 netbook to 2 students, especially when a kid said to me, "You know what, miss, this is stupid." And I thought, "You're so ungrateful, you know. You're getting a turn on this." And this 10-year-old said, "Yeah, but you don't buy 1 writing book and say," and I'm using writing because this is what the child said, "You don't buy 1 writing book and say, 'Oh, here you go, Chrissy, your turn,' and then half an hour later say, 'No, now you sit and watch the other person write because it's their turn.'" And they were right, but I didn't want to know that. And then we got these. These were really flash. They cost heaps of money. Active boards. Who remembers those? They came out. I'll have an active board. Yeah, I'll spend hours on the weekend learning how to do it when I should be doing in-depth planning and assessment, but I'll learn to use the active board because I can make boxes. But it was great because now we started thinking about student engagement. Let's engage students. So let's spend $10,000 on 1 piece of equipment that at the most 2 people, because there's 2 pens, can use at any one time. That'll engage them because it's got one of these. It's called a data projector like that. They were pretty flash. And you could hook your laptop up and do YouTube clips. You know what? In fact, at the end of the year when you're trying to get your assessment up, you could put a video on and call it a class party. Yeah? Anyone done that? This photo here is this young man. Tosh, he was a bit of a challenging student, but he's playing his maths game there. That was actually orchestrated for an article by the University of Auckland. It didn't really happen like that. These tools weren't used like that. Thanks. This is what really happened, eh? We played the odd clip, and these active boards became really flash whiteboards. And teachers write on them. Because, like, it takes too long for kids. They can't take turns. And then they make a mistake. Or their writing's ugly, and they go, shh. And so you're just like, "Oh, no, just look, I'll tell you what, I'll write it up. I'll get your ideas." Better still, you could print these babies off, glue them in a book, tell your principal, "Look at my modelling book. Look at evidence of learning." Put a bit of names around it, it's a bit of student voice. Awesome. But this really did happen. And this is the lead into what I'm here to show you today. This really happened to a bunch of Year 4 students who were going to lose this amazing teacher. She was so cool. She was awesome. Speak Māori, engage in digital devices. She was funny, couldn't sing. And she conned her friend to teach them PE while she taught her friend's class digital learning and cyber smarts, that stuff. So anyway, they didn't know what was going to happen, and they said, "Miss, how do they find a teacher?" I said, "Well, they put an ad in this place called the Gazette." And the kid said, "Oh, yeah." And I said, "Oh, well, what are you thinking?" "Oh, we could make an ad." They're 8. They were 7 at the start of the year. They're 8. They're not cute anymore. They have to follow the rules. I was like, really? And then I was like, I was working out my few weeks, so, my principal said, adapt your curriculum however you like. You're moving on. I said, yeah, okay, then you can make an ad. So we looked at the Gazette, how do you write ads? And I've got to be honest, to the huge crowd in this room. Some of you people that write ads really need to really look at yourself, because the kids looked at the criteria for teachers and they looked at one of them and they said, Miss, this doesn't say much. It says you have to be a New Zealand registered teacher. What else do they want? I looked and read it, and honestly, I said, I think you need to be breathing. So I said to them, how about this? You tell me what you think would make a good teacher. What do you want in your next teacher? What do you want them to be able to do? And what could we do? And they came up with a plethora of ideas, and like the biggest one in the room was a video. Why? Not because they love making videos, they love using the iPad, and they love, like Tracey said, doing selfies. They love communicating their message. This is the difference about how we use technology now. This technology is for students to communicate their messages, how they want, when they want, where they want, with who they want, and whenever and how frequently they want to do it. Can you get my class up? Oh, don't play yet. Cool. Okay, so this is the class, and they're really cute. Just checking for time. They're really cute. They started the year at 7 years old. They have been, yes, it's their first year with Chromebooks, but they've been using iPads the whole previous year. They'd also had Chromebooks as year threes in the second 2 terms so that they could come to terms with the device. But there was a lot of pedagogical change that needed to happen, and they needed to grow up. I once lost this class going swimming because there was a cat underneath the balcony. And this little girl, Trinity Purden, gorgeous. Oh, man, oh, there's a cat. Everyone ran off. They're trying to save the cat. And I'm like, dudes, it got under there by itself. And I said, come on, line up, we're going swimming. I'd taught year 6 before this. I put my hand up to have a year 4 class because none of the other senior teachers really put theirs up, okay? So I lost this whole class. It was really terrible. And I was like, oh, what do I do? I said, oh, I don't know if you've heard of that dojo points. It's that you that go on and you give them, anyone who lines up gets 10 dojos. Whew, they're back, except for Trinity Purden. No way. I'm going to grow up, I'm going to work for the SPCA. This is an empowered kid at 7, and they're cute, so you can't really make them follow the rules. You see, it's when they turn 8, I reckon. And then this other boy goes off and he goes, oh, what does the SPCA do? And she says, they save animals. Oh, I'm going to do that too. So the class starts peeling off again. So I said, 20 dojo points. You can buy any 7-year-old for 20 dojo points. Got them back, lined up. Swimming time was nearly over, but who cares? My point is, this is how these kids started the year. They had the attention span of an ant. It was just the way they were. They're little. But they decided, and we actually used the whiteboard for something meaningful that they were interested in, and I actually did write down their thoughts, that they were going to make this ad. Now, what you're going to see has only teacher input was that she chose pink on the active board. She wrote down their words, and yes, I did help them with grammar. But they decided that I'm pretty stink at stuff like movies, so they went and got some experts. Like we talk about kids accessing experts, and we used to give them the phone book, and they'd go down and go, hi, Mr. Razine, I'm trying to paint a trolley. I need enamel paint. And that's accessing an expert, not these kids. They went next door because the experts were 10 and said, we're making a job interview. Can you come and film us? And so they did. And they did it all without me. They did it because of me. I was leaving. But they would have done this in spite of me. So this is what empowered learners look like. When you get away from thinking about tink, tink, tink on a Chromebook and little apps that entertain them for 10 minutes. Kia ora. Righto.
Firstly, we are a one-to-one device class. So we want a teacher who is a This means you know how to use Chromebooks and you know how to support our learning. We want you to be ICT savvy.
I just want to say something. In this environment, you're learning all the time. You know what I figured out when I was sitting down there? Don't hit play yet, mate. I figured out that what we should have done, because this is in presentation mode, on a Mac that I've never used, and all you can see is the notes, and I'm thinking, you know what we should have done? We should have opened up another one with the videos on it so we could go across the tabs and play the videos. But it was too late by then because it was Raymond's turn and I was next. Okay, so these are the cat chasers.
Okay, my name is Tracey, and my classmates and I have written a job description to guide anyone interested in being our teacher. Firstly, we are a one-to-one device class, so we want a teacher who is a future-focused teacher. This means you know how to use Chromebooks and Google Apps to support our learning. We want you to be ICT savvy. You need to know how to use apps and add-ons. And you need to be willing to learn more and share your learning with us. You need to be organised. We want you to put your planning on our class site so we can see what we are doing before our day starts. This also means we can learn anywhere, any place and any time. Hi, I'm Hira and I'm into sports. We want a teacher who can train us to improve in PE and sports. We would also like someone who is passionate at art. We want someone who encourages us to learn stuff we want to learn about. I want to build a rocket ship. That would be cool.
We want you to have a sense of humour. You gotta do funny things.
You need to be able to laugh at yourself and make us laugh. We want you to be happy and kind. You definitely do not have to yell at us to get our attention. Yelling is annoying. You don't have to yell at us in front of everyone. That's just embarrassing. Yeah, take it outside. Leave our manner intact. We want you to be able to or willing to learn to speak, hear Māori, and know about tikanga Māori.
The last thing is really important and must have. We want you to care about us.
This means comforting us when we are sad. Stick up for us when you know we are telling the truth. And protect us. So if this sounds like you, then email our principal Hira at principal@kaikohekohe.school.nz. Thanks for watching. Look forward to meeting you.
It's okay, they'll have forgotten by next year. Okay, Nāku te raurau no te raurau ka ora ai ngā tamariki. Biggest message there is, with your basket in mind for our children, we've got enough, more than enough. As my principals have said, never underestimate the power of whānau, never make judgments about anyone in your community. If you want to do something, if it's in the interest of your learners, if it's going to empower your tamariki to be successful, do it, because learning together is empowering. Tēnā koutou katoa. Jane would like to answer questions. Are there any questions?